Hi, and welcome to the Right to Remain Silent podcast. I'm Jim Weber, your host and guide through actual accounts of intriguing and fascinating true crime stories as told by the law enforcement professional that experienced the event. The Right to Remain Silent podcast makes no exaggeration of fact, doesn't glamorize details, or sensationalize reality. The format here is basic. Real stories from real cops. Lastly, please don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and share. Doing this will help me continue to provide you, the listener, with captivating and relevant true crime stories. Now, let's listen in on today's episode. Hi, and welcome to today's episode of the Right to Remain Silent True Crime Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Weber, and today's guest is Tucson, Arizona Police Department retired homicide detective William Hanson. Bill, thank you for being a guest today and sharing your stories. I greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it too.
All right, good deal. Well, what I normally like to do is just read a brief bio to let listeners know about your background and where you're coming from as we talk today. Would that be okay if I read that?
Sure.
All right, here we go. William Hanson is a seasoned law enforcement professional who spent 30 years with the Tucson, Arizona Police Department and retired as a detective specializing in death and cold case investigations. Bill is a retired Air Force and Arizona Air National Guard First Sergeant with 22 years of service. He now travels nationwide instructing investigators in crime scene processing, death investigation techniques, protocols for suspicious deaths, and cold case methodology. He has served as an instructor at the Southern Arizona Law Enforcement Training Center in Tucson, Arizona, and has taught death investigation courses at Pima Community College, Northern Arizona University, and the University of Arizona. Bill has also been featured in numerous episodes of the wildly popular A&E show The First 48. Bill, that is a top-notch background. I'm sure you've seen things that most people can only imagine.
Yeah, it was quite the career, that's for sure. And I'm under 30 years. I was only between a deputy sheriff in Mojave County and with Tucson, I came just under 27 years, but I've been teaching now for uh just about 10. So I mean, I guess
Sure,
basically you'd say it was over 30
sure.
years, but
Yeah, yeah, okay. Well, thanks for clarifying that. I appreciate that.
sure,
Hey,
you
I
bet.
always appreciate guests that have a military background, and yours seems pretty extensive, and I just kind of wanted to briefly discuss it. Could you maybe share a little bit about your military background? What drew you to the military? What drew you to that specific branch, and what'd you do?
Well, I actually my grandfather was in the Navy in World War II. I was a petty officer on a rocket ship over in the Pacific. Was at Kwajalein, Iwo Jima, a few places like that. Got the Purple Heart. My dad entered the military at 17, lied on his birth certificate and said he was 18, and was streaming across the Pacific in the Navy when they signed the treaty. And he got over there just in time to pick up a bunch of prisoners and bring them to trial over there.
Wow.
From that, my brother Don went in the Army back in the 60s. His draft number was like 200. My dad convinced him, you may want to enlist. It may be a little bit easier on you. And he did. He went in. He was in Army intelligence over in the Vietnam War.
Okay.
He was over in Thailand and Cambodia and Laos and Japan. But a lot of those places, they back then they couldn't talk about being in.
Sure.
But
Yep.
he did that. my other older brother went into the Air Force back in the 70s, and he was a fire instructor down in Chanute or Rantoul is the town in Illinois. So it's Chanute Air Force Base. And he was a
Sure.
fire instructor there. And I had a buddy that was wanting to go in the Navy. We are going to be SEALs together. And back in the day, I thought you could be a SEAL just by, enlisting. And
Yep.
we actually talked to a recruiter who was pretty sharp. And he's like, it doesn't happen that way, guys. You got to go through so much. You have to have, you know, sterling avals and be able to go through these things. And then if you get selected for bud training and things like that, then you go through it. It's not anything that's real quick. And I said, well, I still want to do it. Well, my buddy ended up getting married about a month before we enlisted. And
Hmm.
I thought, well, shoot, now what am I going to do? I
Right.
mean, I could go in, we're going to do the buddy system thing, as they called it back in the 80s. Actually, 70s by this point. It was late 70s. And I ended up going, well, you know what? I've got to do something. I had just been recently married. I was in I was a framer up in Phoenix, and three construction companies folded, and I went, I got to go in.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and looked at it, looked at the Air Force, and went, you know what? My brother's already in there. Let me go ahead and join. If I don't like it, I could always do something else later on as far as the Marine Corps or Army or Navy or whatever. But I went ahead in the Air Force and started there. I went in basic in March of 1980,
Hmm. Okay.
down in wonderful Lackland Air Force Base down in Texas.
Yep.
And I started in air cargo and did that for a number of years. I was in 10 years active duty, actually 9 years, 11 months, and some odd days. And unfortunately, I got divorced and was looking at, do I stay in? Do I get out? What do I want to do? And I had always wanted to be a cop. And at that point, I heard about the Palace Chase program. What Palace Chase is, if you're active duty and you want to go guard or a reserve guard, you go ahead and enter this. And I just re-enlisted, so I had 3 years left on my enlistment, and the only thing that's I guess troubling about that, if you want to call it that, is you have to give double the time back. So I'd be looking at 6 years of an
Hmm.
enlistment in the reserves. I was going to go to Norton Air Force Base, be in a reserve program there. They closed Norton. It's like, doggone it. It's just
Right.
shooting me in the foot. My
Right.
brother was a boom operator on a KC-135 up in Phoenix at the 161st Air Refueling Squadron. And I went, you know what? Since Norton just folded and I can't do that now, I still had the Palace Chase assignment. I could go reserve or guard. And I went, let me look at the guard side of it. And I could do that. So I did. I went up to Phoenix. I got into CE actually and was doing roads and pavement for my first two drills.
Oh, wow.
After that, a spot came up in mobility. They looked at me. I did a lot of mobility stuff in my first 10 years. So I went ahead and got into that. And then after serving a number of years of mobility, the first sergeant position started coming up because of retirees and things, attrition program. So I went ahead and said, you know what, I've always thought about being a first sergeant, so I'll go ahead and do that. And got into security forces, which is ironic because most of the guys that are in security forces and the reserves or guard are cops on the
Oh,
outside. So I went ahead and got into that. I had people that were cops in Phoenix, Mesa, Chandler, Border Patrol, parole officers. I mean, I had a whole lot of those type of folks, which was great because they don't get in trouble. If they do, they're going to be kicked out of the military and their departments. So
yeah.
uh, I did it that way. Retiring September 9th of 2001. 2 days later, they ripped up all my paperwork, said you're in stop loss, and I stayed in for an extra amount of time before I was able to retire.
Wow. Wow. So you were in for a significant amount of time, active duty and the reserve.
Yeah, 10 years active and then 12 reserve, and then was able to get out with my
All
20-year
right.
letter. I
Well,
had
your
22 altogether.
okay, your law enforcement career kind of makes sense a little bit hearing that. that you were exposed to, law enforcement, different walks of law enforcement while still in the military there. So, question for you, do you think your military career um, helped you down the road in your law enforcement career?
100%,
Okay.
100%.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
that makes
a
sense.
lot of the law enforcement, you're paramilitary anyway. So I'd already come into that understanding of it. I remember going to my academy. And the nice thing about it, when I went Palace Chase, I was able to get out of the active duty and then start the Guard Reserve program. But the only thing is, right after that, I was able to go in and start law enforcement. So I went ahead and went for my academy. I had to go through my 2 week type of thing and
Hmm.
2 week deployment and once a month weekends. But I mean, I was able to filter that in through my academy time and also my training. So I started law enforcement right off the bat and was able to
Okay.
do that in conjunction with the military commitment.
Well, it sounds
And
like it was meant to be almost.
yeah, well, I knew at a young age. I was five. His old story. I've told this on a bunch of podcasts. 5 years old, my dad bought me a Dick Tracy nose revolver cap gun, and I told him back then I'm going to be a cop, and he's like, okay. He was a fireman in Chicago.
Okay.
One of my older brothers was a fireman in Chicago also, and that's the area he thought I was going to be going into. Unfortunately, came the black sheep, became a cop.
Is there that cop fireman debate, back and forth in the family?
Oh yeah, he always. Well, my dad and my brother have since passed. My dad died when I was 17, so quite a
Mm,
long time ago. My
sure.
brother passed away a few years back.
I'm
One of my
sorry to hear
brothers.
that.
Yeah, and but they were always, ribbing me, and I'd rib them back. My
Yeah.
dad told me, listen, if you become a fireman, at least people wave at you with five fingers, not one. And I always
How
thought that was
accurate was
funny.
that? Yep.
Yeah, yeah,
Good
yeah.
deal. Well, let's talk about your law enforcement career. Maybe you could kind of walk us through where, what your first department was and where you started and your first assignment there.
Yeah, well, one of the stories about that, I had a brother that was shot and killed in New York, and
Oh, sorry
that was
about
when I
that.
was in the military. It was when I was in the military when I first went into basic training. So I had to get out and go back for the funeral. They told me they'll probably have to recycle me. I'd have to start all over again. I was in about I think I was midway through my basic training. Um, so I went ahead and did that back in Arizona. I went back. I had some outstanding classmates in basic training. I left as a squad leader. I came back as just a grunt, thinking, well,
Mm,
I'm going to go back all the way through this again. But they all pulled me on board. They got me through all my testing, and I was able to graduate on time, thank God.
yeah.
Um, so I went ahead and did that. And then when I started my law enforcement career, the ironic thing about it is the Gulf War started. First Gulf War.
Mm,
I was in the academy. I get a call from one of my senior master sergeants going, "Hey, you're looking at rotating in the Kuwait under the mobility AFSC, which I was still mobility at that time. I wasn't a first sergeant yet." And I
okay.
went, "Oh man, that's going to stink because I'm in the middle of my academy now too. So I'm probably going to have to restart this all over again if they'll even bring me back on board. Nothing
Right.
guaranteed back in 1990.
Sure.
Um, so I went ahead and he took my place. He went to Kuwait instead. He was there for less than a month. The Air Force did a great job over there and bombed everything and kept everything out of the sky, and we were out of there before you know it.
Yeah.
So I was able to stay in the academy.
Oh,
From there,
that's
I went to Mojave
fortunate.
County. Yeah. From there, I went to Mojave County. I was a deputy sheriff, was in FTO, uh, was a SWAT operator and a SWAT team leader. And then I was able to transfer out of there. I came to Casa Grande, actually, Casa Grande Police Department for a cup of coffee. I was there for a short amount of time. We had a great chief up there, a great sergeant, also John Ellsworth. And I was actually testing with Tucson PD at the time. But back then the testing wasn't quick. I mean, I go in, I do my written, I come back a few months later and do my oral board, and it's like, holy cow, this is taking forever. Took a
Right.
year and a half processing to be able to get there. In the meantime,
Unbelievable.
I left Mojave County, got to Casa Grande, was hired on the spot. The chief said, "I'm hiring you." And I went, "Chief, I haven't even done anything yet." He goes, "I don't care. I like you. I'm going to hire you."
There
And he
you
did.
go.
He put me in the street. I started my FTO. Um, did that for a few months. By the time I got done with my field training, Tucson called up and said, "Hey, we're going to do a background on you. Looks like you're going to get hired and you're going to be in an academy." And I'm like, "Guys, I'm already established here at Casa Grande, which is just between Phoenix and Tucson."
Okay.
I said, I'll probably be happy staying here. And they went, "Well, you know what? Why don't you let us do the background? If it comes up, great, not a problem. You can see if you want to come here. If it doesn't, stay in Casa Grande." And I went, "All right, that's fine." Uh,
That
I
makes
don't know how many
sense.
weeks. Yeah, I don't know how many weeks later they called me up and said, "We have an academy date for you, and Tucson's ready to pick you up." I wanted to come here because my kids from the prior marriage were both down here, and I wanted to come to Tucson to be near them, of course. So I thought, you know what? That's what I wanted to do, and that's what I'm going to do. So I came to Tucson.
Yeah.
Found out it was in a 17-week basic academy all over again after I'd already done this 3 years before.
That kind of
I'm
hurts a
thinking to
little
myself,
bit, doesn't it?
yeah, it's like, come on, you got to be kidding me. The
Yeah.
lateral class, the last one we'll ever have, started last month, so you couldn't be in that one. And it's like, I was in this process for a year and a half. You couldn't have called me a month ago and said, come to this one.
Right.
So,
Man, that sounds
long
like
story
my
short,
kind of luck.
yeah, long story short, Murphy's Law, 17 weeks later, thank God, I was able to get through without an injury. We had people that broke their shoulder, broke their
Mm,
legs, uh, knee getting all screwed up. It was a real mess, but thankfully I was able to get through it and then started my FTO, got through that first time around. We had a bunch of people who were recycled, unfortunately, through
mm,
theirs, but I'd already been a cop, so it was a little bit easier for me to get established in that, I would like to say.
sure.
And I had some good trainers.
Good deal.
And then
That's always helpful.
with Tucson, I got hired in '93 from Casa Grande. Um, and I went ahead and got through my stuff and was a street cop for a number of years. I also did some uh, they call it Bravo, which is it's a it's not an undercover assignment, but I mean you wear plain clothes, you could grow a little bit of a beard, facial hair, people get earrings all the dang time and things like that.
Sure.
We'd buy dope, set up prostitution stings, we'd arrest the prostitutes off the streets, and it was more of a community problem type activity, if you will.
Sure.
So I did
Sure. That
that
makes
for my
sense.
last year. And then I got promoted to detective in 98 and never looked back. I did detective work for almost 18 years.
Oh, that's substantial. That's a substantial chunk of time. Now,
Yeah.
when you transition into the detective bureau or becoming a detective, how does that work at Tucson? Are you a general detective or are you assigned specifically to a narcotics squad or a homicide squad? How did it work there during that time?
Right. As far as detectives, for us, it's a civil service promotion. It's not where you have a badge one day and you get in trouble and you have another badge, you're back in patrol.
Yeah.
You're promoted. You have to be
Okay.
demoted to be able to get out of that. So with that,
Okay.
yeah, we have different specialized units, and I started in the burglary task force, major offenders unit, and I did that for 3 years. That was a great assignment. Besides doing the burglaries, um, we did a lot of sting operations where we'd buy stolen property from dopers and go through and try to take them off the street. A lot of heroin dealers, things like that.
Yeah.
We had a storefront that we set up where we'd sell stolen property
Yep.
and do things through that. We did a lot of surveillance, a lot of overtime. It was a lot of fun, and kind of an undercover assignment with that too. I mean, we drove cool cars and looked at parts, We didn't sit there in a shirt and tie all the time. I mean, we were dressed down a lot of times, dealing with the some of the schmucks out there in the street.
Yep.
And it was nice because a lot of your CIs, you're able to go back through and turn them onto some of these things.
Right.
So it was kind of fun.
How,
From that, I went to go ahead.
no, no, I was going to ask, how long did you work in investigations like that before
That was
becoming
a
a
three,
homicide?
yeah, it was a 3 year spot in there, and then
Okay.
I finally got a chance to get into people crimes, and I started an aggravated assault. But in aggravated assault in 2000, I started my own homicide cases. If somebody was beat, stabbed, shot, and didn't die automatically, that was our case. So I was able
Okay.
to start pulling my own homicides in 2000. And the other nice part about it, the homicide sergeant that was in there was trying to get me in the unit early, and I was able to start working homicides with them as soon as I got in ag assault. I was working crime scenes a lot, but I was able to process all the crime scenes for them and do these type of things. And so if I wasn't on call out for ag assault, I was on call out for homicide, and always gone basically.
Yeah, I would guess so. Is it during your career, did you gravitate towards you had an interest in homicide investigations or I'm sure you had buddies that like, hey, I want to be a narc, I want to work drug cases. Hey, I want to be SWAT, I want to do, that type of thing. Or I want to be a supervisor. Did you in your mind during that time frame have the concept of, hey, I'm really interested in homicide investigations, or was that just something that you just through the course of your work, that's the direction you went?
After what happened to my brother, I wanted to work homicides. I knew that early on when I got into police work.
Okay.
That's where my ultimate goal was going to be. When I first started, excuse me, in detective work, I was thinking maybe I'd go work with DEA, be an agent with them,
Hmm.
because I had kind of an interest with that when I worked with the major offenders unit and things, doing the buy bus and buying dope, things like that. Um,
Yeah.
that kind of piqued my interest a little bit, but I knew once I got over that hump, I wanted to get into homicide. So, like I said, I started working the cases in 2000. By 2005, I was in homicide in earnest, and
Okay.
went from there. One of the problems I had, of course, was being a first sergeant and trying to round my time up. And I wanted to get into homicide back in like 2001. Sorry, we're having a lightning storm. I could hear it, thunder
Oh,
going
okay.
on. But I could hear it in 2001 where I wanted to get into homicide. The sergeant wanted to put me in homicide, and I was like, I'm back on active duty. And
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember how long I was on active duty for after 9/11, but it wasn't like I was back at work. I was gone for quite a while. Um, and I was also doing work through the military where I wasn't even in state. I
Mm.
was in country, but not in state.
Hmm.
And all we were doing was trying to get ready for the war because we figured we'd be going somewhere. And we were
Right.
just trying to get units ready and get ourselves ready to do that. Um, so by 2002, by the time I retired, they'd already put 3 new people in homicide. And it was like, oh, man, I just missed this window.
Yeah.
And I knew I'd have to wait a little bit longer. I did. I had to wait a couple of years. The thing with us with homicide, just like a lot of the other departments, 20, 30 years ago, if somebody wasn't retiring or dying or promoting, you weren't getting in there. This wasn't something where, you had a year under your belt as a detective and they said, hey, we're going to make you a detective in homicide. Didn't happen that way. Um, you had to, again, wait for somebody to promote, retire, die. And I was lucky enough. Jim Filippelli was a good buddy of mine. He went ahead and said, I'm in my drop program. He was getting ready to retire. And he went ahead and switched with me, came over to Ag Assault, and I went to homicide
Oh, okay.
and took his position there.
And I assume back then, and just like today almost, it was a sought after position to be a homicide detective. That was a goal. A lot of my friends, coming up in law enforcement, that's what they wanted to do. And they looked at it as a very distinguished achievement. So I'm assuming it was the same with you.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's something you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Um, you know, you're no different than any other detective, but I mean, you get moved into that echelon where you know what you're doing. You're a go-getter. If you're not going to be in there very long. If you don't have good cases, if you don't do well with your prosecutors, or with the judges, or even defense attorneys for that matter, you may not be in that position for too long.
Yeah, that
You
makes
know,
sense. How
so
about, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just had a good rapport with everybody, and I that's one of the things about me. Was never the super educated guy or any of that stuff. I was a hard worker and always wanted to do my best, whether it be doing a crime scene investigation, interviewing someone, working a police shooting, an officer in custody death, an officer's death. I wanted to do the best I could.
Yeah. I always looked up to homicide detectives. I have a couple friends that actually still do that today. And that was something that, I wouldn't say I didn't have an interest in it. I just don't know that I had I don't know what the right word is, wherewithal to see all of the things that you're going to see and hear all the things that you're going to hear. So, I always to this day respect guys that do that.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. And
Yeah.
I was I was the trainer for homicide the whole time, my whole tenure I was there. And anybody that came in new to the unit, I was a trainer for them. I was also a detective trainer for new detectives getting promoted. And they normally stop into homicide. And I was one of the trainers in there for that, where they learn about what's call out, working warrants, crime scenes, things like that, doing interviews. And we'd have a 2 week rotation through homicide where it'd be nonstop call out for them. And they're like, this is the greatest thing ever. I love
Yeah.
doing all this work. And it's like, well, you may not be doing that much work down the road, depending on where you end up at. Um, if you're an auto theft detective or a team detective or something like that, you may not be doing, a whole lot of fun stuff like this, might be retail theft, things like that. But you could always work up to this. If you like it, yes, come back. And, we'd certainly try to get you in here. And,
Sure.
just going through that and working 18 years of evals for people, you normally see who's going to be your go-getter and who's not.
Yeah,
Um,
I would imagine. Let me ask you this question. With the
sure.
advances in technology over the years from the early 90s up until today. I mean, we're talking things like smartphones, flock cameras, digital evidence, DNA tech, all these advances, cell towers, cell site information, and security cameras, ring cameras everywhere. My question is, do you think the landscape of being a homicide detective has changed from the time frame when you started out until now because of all these different changes and improvements in technology, these advances?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Um, one of the things I know was on a TV show, I won't mention which one, but I always had on my desk, um, go out and knock on some effing doors, because that's your job. I never wanted to be that person in homicide that sat there and waited for the damn phone to ring saying, hey,
Yeah,
we got the DNA hit or we got a fingerprint hit or, I want to be out there and I want to go knock some doors, talk to CIs, talk to people on the street and try to get information that I could. I didn't want to sit behind that dang desk all day long because you're not doing your job.
yeah,
Um, and I know with the advancements we've had, oh, sure. I mean, since I started police work, I mean, back in the day, we were sitting over the Polaroids, waving them around, waiting for the thing to drop to
yeah,
see if you had a good picture.
yeah,
Um, we had fingerprint analysis back in the 80s and 90s. Um, we had you know, foot impressions and footwear and tracking and things like that when I was a deputy sheriff, where we started doing those things. And then we got into things like, yeah, the cell phone downloads, which were great as long as you had a nice UFED and it was able to download the thing. Early on with the smartphones, I remember plugging those things in and leaving them somewhere secured because they had to download all night long, and then the half of the next day for you to get some of the information off of the darn phone. Now it's a lot
Yeah.
better, of course. Um,
Yeah.
with the technology, with the cell phone tower hits, things like that, sure, that's helped us out a lot. Geofence warrants have helped out
Oh,
a lot
yeah.
with that, although they're, I hate to say they're being curtailed, but they're a lot more things are being taken away from us, and we should have more, if you ask me.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
anything that can help us with our investigations, I'm all in favor of. But
Yeah.
the advancements they have, sure, everything, LPRs, license plate readers, things like that, the communication systems, RMS, CAD, things like that that have improved. So more people are able to talk to each other about cases they're working that might be matched up with something else. That's helped us out a lot too. One of the difficulties we had a police department here. Our city department didn't want to deal with the county department, with our sheriff's office, and they always butted heads, which was problematic for us because we were trying to get the information across to different detectives in different areas, and a lot of times that was stymied. And
Yeah.
I just think that was foolish. It's like the problems that police have with fire for years. It's like, why? We should be
Right.
working. We're on the same team. We're on the same team, folks. Let's
Yeah.
let's work together and try to get this solved.
Yeah. Let's make it easier on everybody by kind of cohesively working. That makes complete sense. Are
Sure.
there any, are there, you know, recalling on your years of experience, are there any cases that really stand out in your mind, homicide investigation wise, that you could discuss?
Oh gosh, I could talk about. I mean, my classes that I teach, I teach for two different uh, associations, and most of my classes are on cases, and we talk
Okay.
about the cases. We go through evals on those, and um, problems we have with them. I never come with the understanding of these are the great cases I had.
Right.
We did such a great job, rah, rah, rah. No,
Right.
it's, well, this is where we fell into shit, and this is where we tried to get the case work for us. And this is where we had a problem with it. We either overcame that or now it's a cold case. Um, but those type of things happen a lot. I've got a lot of cases that I talk about, these different classes that discuss things where it became a problem, or first responder didn't do something right, or I didn't do something right, or we had a county attorney that decided to let the evidence go after we told them it's an ag assault. Don't let this evidence go because it'll be a murder once they go through their autopsy. And the doctor goes, "Well, yeah, based on the fact that they've had diabetes and things like that, based on the fact they're in a wheelchair because they got shot 15 years ago. This is all you know, it's all accumulative, but it's all because of the fact it got shot. So based on that, it's going to be a homicide now.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay. Yeah.
we've had county attorneys that went ahead and told evidence, yeah, go ahead and get rid of the stuff. After I already told them, don't get rid of it. Uh, Call from homicide. I'm sorry, from the medical examiner's office up in Phoenix. Yeah, this guy you had that got shot 15 years ago. He passed away. So now it's a homicide. I'm like, okay, all right. We still have that file. It's in the cold case room. You go grab that because you know what's going to happen. Go down to evidence. They're like, yeah, that's already been all destroyed. What do you
Wow.
mean it's been destroyed? I asked for that to be kept for 99 years. You asked me several years ago about this because, of course, with an ag assault, he got shot. So it was an ag assault case. Your statute of limitations is 7 years. But we knew based on the fact that he was shot and once he dies, it's going to go homicide. Do not destroy this. Do not get rid of it.
Yeah.
We even had that in writing. And county attorney just went, nah, get rid of it. And they did. And
Oh,
by the time that came back around, the case is gone.
oh man.
And
That's gotta be,
it's wonderful to call the family and tell them, hey, I tried to do the best job I could, but guess what? This is not here anymore.
yeah.
And
That's gotta be devastating to both you as a detective and that the family members.
right. Right.
Wow.
Yeah. Not very happy, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, and as part of your, you've referenced cold case investigations. So you worked, homicide investigations for so many years, for such a long portion of your career. I'm assuming that homicide, like you said, kind of mingles or intermingles with cold case investigations. Could you, for the benefit, you and I know what it is, and we talked about it for just a minute, but could you just give like a basic description of a homicide investigation versus a cold case investigation from the perspective of the detective? I know we kind of touched on it a little bit here, but what are the differences for somebody that's not, in the law enforcement field?
Right. For a homicide investigation, if you have a smoking gun, if you got a suspect standing there with a smoking gun, it's pretty much a done deal. You're able to talk to them, get the information from them, get information from witnesses. So it's kind of a hot case. It's something that's actively working. Um, with cases like we had a lot of suspicious deaths, and that's one of the classes that I teach for NCJTC is suspicious death that I teach with one of our medical examiners here from Tucson. And we talk about some of these suspicious deaths that have gone to solve or gone to homicide, suicide, undetermined, natural, accidental, or they've gone to a cold case status. And a cold case status just means you have no working uh, investigative leads or suspects in the process. The case has sat there and you haven't got any other information on it. And we do, excuse me, we do a lot of things. We go in 88 Crime, we go on Crime Stoppers, we go on the news. We put up flyers, we put up money to through the 88 Crime and the Crime Stoppers to try to see if we can get someone talking about the fact that, hey, if you can help us find out who's responsible for this, if we come up with a prosecution and we can get a conviction, you could get money out of this. And a lot of times that money talked.
Oh yeah.
But the cold case, once you have nothing on it and it's been sitting for a while, and again, it's not something we do in a vacuum. It's not something we go, well, you know what, this file is bad. I don't like the case, so it's gonna go to cold case. We'd work it. I don't care if you're a drug dealer, if you're a prostitute, if you're a mom and pop, if you're a shop owner that got killed. I'm working all of those 110% the same way. Where you do hear, unfortunately, about some of these departments going, man, it's a doper. I'm not worried about it.
Right.
That wasn't the way we dealt with it. From the first 48 cases, I think you could see that on some of those. We worked those until we couldn't anymore. And once that goes into that status, we'd meet with the supervisor. We talk to the medical examiner's office about it. We talk to the prosecutor about it and say, we can't do anything else with this. Even command staff, we talk with them about it too and say, we're kind of at a dead end here. We can put it in the cold case room. And what the cold case room is, or a cold case status, it just it sits in the room until you're able to get something else on it, where maybe something comes up where somebody goes into jail and they're there on a drug conviction, and they go, hey, you know what? I know about a murder, and can I give you some of the information on that and maybe lighten my sentence or get some years off on what I'm looking at for my probation or something like that. And
Sure.
yeah, we'd be the first ones to say, yeah, let's go ahead and do a free talk and let's find out what they know and maybe it'll help this case. Um, we'd also look at those cold cases and you've got husbands and wives that break up all the time. We've got boyfriends and girlfriends or boyfriends and boyfriends or girlfriends and girlfriends that break up. And we look at that and go, all right, I'm going to make contact with them again and see if there's some information they might want to provide. And we've had them tell us before, hey, you know what? He did murder that person back then, but it was my husband. What could I do?
All right.
We're able to go through and work this case and spit it all up again. Um, we'd also look at jail calls and mail that went out through the different uh, institutions, and we look to see if anything got spun up because we did we did a thing on 88 crime, or we put up a bunch of flyers, or we went on the news and talked about it. You start looking at your jail calls to see if somebody's talking about the fact that, hey, did anybody ever get rid of that thing we were talking about before on that one thing that happened down on South Sixth? And you're able to kind of piece that together with who they're talking to and go, oh, they're talking about the murder,
Yeah.
because a lot of times you spin up things like that. Now with iPads in the jail system, you look at people going online and people sending emails and things like that. That's also one of the things we look at too. And I'm not trying to talk about all the tools of the trade, but anything that could help in these cases,
Oh, yeah.
we've got a computer forensics unit that helps us out with a lot of these things. They go through downloads of emails and computers and whatever else they might be able to look at, thumb drives and so forth, and hopefully put something together.
Yeah.
But cold cases are just that. They're in that status where we're not actively working them. They're not dead in the water. Might be a bad term to say,
Right.
but we're not stopping the investigation. It's still there, but it's just not actively being worked. But we do go back and we do touch on those cases. I've got probably a little over 30. A few of those are in a warrant status where the people are from Mexico and we're waiting to be able to get a hold of them. So they're in the warrant status until we get them coming across the border, and then we can go ahead and you know take action then and go ahead back through with the court process.
Yeah.
But the cold cases, a lot of times they're sitting in that status where they're just not being worked actively. And
Okay.
then hopefully when something gets brought up or new information is known, we jump right back into them.
All right. That makes complete sense. That's a great description of the differences and how they both work. Something, I'm curious about. Can you recall like the longest amount of time in your experience that a cold case has, from the time that it occurred to the time that new information came or it was worked again? I guess the question is, how long was the case cold? Do you recall any specific, like outlandish number, something incredibly high, 20 years, 30 years,
40
more?
years,
Really?
40 years. Yeah, I've heard of that before. I've heard of
Wow.
that where it pops up.
Sure.
Um,
Okay.
you know, the only problem we have with cold cases, of course, are people pass away. They get lost in the system. We can't find them anymore. And so that's problematic for us. Um, we've had it happen before where information comes up that someone was identified that maybe took part in this, or not necessarily the shooter, but they were there. They were the watch out, the lookout, whatever you want to call it. And we try to go back to them. They're deceased. The
Mm,
family doesn't know anything about it. We look at anything they may have that they did correspondence wise, or saving texts or pictures or anything like that, and you just come into a dead end. But yeah, I've heard of cold cases 20, 30, 40 years easily.
okay.
That's why in some of the classes I teach, I talk about the fact that they need to have standardization out there as far as writing the report the same way, documenting everything, because you get people getting promoted, retiring, passing away, unfortunately. And that case is going to pop up again. A new investigator is going to have to look at that if you're not around and try to make sense out of this thing. If it's not done properly, if they can't make any sense out of it, it could go by the wayside when they've got a viable suspect for this. But if you can't make any sense out of that damn case, you're not going to be able to bring that through to court.
This episode of the Right to Remain Silent True Crime Podcast is sponsored by Graphic Options. When it comes to custom screen printing, embroidery, and promotional gear, Brenda and her team are the real deal. I trust them with everything, whether it's a hat for my consulting business, a shirt for my podcast, or a large order of both. They've never let me down. They don't treat you like just another order. They listen, they care, and they make sure you walk away with something you're proud to put your name on. You have the right to great service and quality, and that's exactly what you'll get at Graphic Options. Visit graphicoptionsonline.com. That's graphicoptionsonline.com, and let them know the Right to Remain Silent podcast sent you. Yeah, great point. Great point. Let me, you mentioned something earlier about suspects maybe returning to Mexico or something along those lines. I wanted to ask you, with the proximity of Tucson to the Mexican border, did you see many, I don't know if you'd call them drug related homicides or maybe homicides where, an individual traveled from Mexico to the US, committed that homicide and then disappeared back into Mexico. Did you encounter many of those types of scenarios?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say out of my cold cases, probably 70% of those were from across the border, where somebody would lose a load or two and be brought up here, shot, dumped, and all you've got for a crime scene is where the body fell, a tire track that you can't make out anymore because of the wear and tear on the tires that were on the car to begin with. They've
Yeah.
got a bullet in them, and that's it.
Yeah, that's not much to work with, is it?
No, no.
Okay.
And with those type of cases, unfortunately, it's not going to be solved. The family would come up from Mexico. We'd go through the consulate to be able to identify them. If we didn't have any identifying marks, normally their wallets were pulled and, you get fingerprints or DNA, but that was it because they didn't have any ID on them at all.
Yeah.
The folks that brought them up here made sure of that. But we'd be able to go through the consulate with fingerprints, and we would bring the family up here, and they'd be appreciative that they were able to get their loved one and bring them back home. But we tell them the difficulties we would going to be having with trying to solve the case, and they just put up their hands and say, "We understand.
Yeah.
We're involved in some bad things down there, and if they got sideways with the cartels, easy way to get rid of them is just smoke them. They leave them
Yeah.
at the border. They chop them up. I've seen them out in the fields before where the birds eating them, pigs eating them, you name it.
Yeah.
And anybody that thinks we don't have a problem on the southern border, yeah, come down here sometime. I'll take you on a tour.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a fantastic point. A great point. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. I was a U.S. Customs agent for years, and then we transitioned to ICE and Homeland Security, and did many details along the border, the southern border, and
Sure,
saw firsthand the violence occurring all through there. I can't imagine, you know, I had the opportunity to go down there for 30, 60, 90 days and then come home. You're there. That's your career. You're working with that. You're seeing that every day. So you would be a perfect person to open people's eyes to that violence along the border.
sure. Yeah, my son-in-law actually, he's a not a chief. He's with Customs out of Dulles. He does oh shoot, a watch commander at nighttime,
Oh, okay.
and he's been doing that for a while. But he used to be on the border at Douglas, and that's
Okay.
where he started out in Customs. And
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
he carrying an M4 and just having a ball out there, stopping
Yeah.
cars and getting
Yeah.
dope and people and everything else.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it happens all the way through Arizona, California, of course, New Mexico, Texas. Uh,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
never ending. And with the people in DC or wherever they want to be that sit there and poo-poo that, man, come out here and I'll take you on a drive. And you'll be
Right.
able to see firsthand people getting where they have catapults and are launching dope across the border or driving the truck on the ramps over the over
Right.
the system out there. It's
Yeah.
asinine.
It's unbelievable. And, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, politically, Democrat, Republican, whatever. I, I, I think it's hard to argue that there's an issue along the border. And, President Trump, maybe the way he addresses things sometimes is a little bit gruff but it's to the point. I cannot disagree and his uh with him when he says there are people coming across the border that are bad people. So yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Um,
Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that came in prior to that that were real bad. They just
yeah,
were allowed in.
yeah,
These families coming across the border, you know, 6, 8 years ago that said, we're here with our kids. Next thing you know, the kids are homeless, and these two idiots that came across the border with them are gone because it wasn't
right,
their mom and dad.
right.
They were being worked with the coyotes, and it's just a problem.
Yeah, I'm sure
Absolutely.
that's a topic we could we could spiral off and talk for hours on.
Sure.
And but yeah, yeah. Let me ask, I can only assume there's a certain satisfaction when you solve a homicide case or especially a cold case. Is there a certain satisfaction that you feel when you do that?
Absolutely. With my brother's case, that's still an unsolved.
Mm,
Uh, he was
I
shot
hate to
and
hear
killed,
that.
and yeah, shot and killed, and some blonde girl ran off, and it's like, so how's this thing unsolved?
Yeah,
Um, but I I always looked at that and said, I'll never let that happen in my cases. And unfortunately, I mean, I'd love to say I solved all my cases. No, unfortunately not. I did the best I could. And I made sure that I put that in a cold case room, the ones I couldn't solve, where someone could look at that thing 30, 40, 50 years when I'm not here anymore and go, yeah, we could still put this thing together and we could convict this guy or girl or whoever it may be.
right.
Um, but you always lose sleep. Kid cases, some of the cases that I thought I could solve and I couldn't. You want to have, I don't want to say closure. I hate that word. And I never got it. And I never wanted to say that to the victims' families either.
Yeah,
They want an end result on this, and they want it to be hopefully something that's positive for them. Does it bring their kid back? Absolutely not. Does it at least help them with some of the healing? I hope so. Um,
yeah,
you're not going to get complete closure until you end up there and you're able to meet with your loved ones and do those type of things. But you know, yeah, that word closure, I hate that.
yeah.
An
Yep.
ending, an ending, yes. Uh, did I get satisfaction though out of solving my cases? Yeah, absolutely, 110%. Um, I always like being able to do that. I always like going through with the court trials. I I don't I don't normally brag about that stuff, but I've never lost one as far as the trials that I went through with. I've had a couple of hung juries where it was 11-1, convict, nah, and then we
Mm,
do a retrial and convict them. I had a couple of those, but that just makes you better. In my teachings, I always talk about the sword you come in with that's awful dull. And by the time you go through all your court cases and all your trials and tribulations, that gets sharpened up. And boy, by the time you get done, you've got a saber and cut through anything.
yeah. That makes sense. And uh, towards the end here, before we finish our conversation, I want to discuss your teaching and your instructing that you do and talk a little bit about that and specific courses and maybe how people can contact you if they're interested. So we're going to definitely cover that as well. I think that is very important. For somebody with your background and experience to share what you've seen and learned can be truly beneficial for law enforcement today. But let
Hope so.
me, yeah, yeah. Let me transition to the program, the first 48 hours. Now that was a show that filmed at Tucson PD, right?
Yes.
All right. So for listeners that might not be familiar with what this show is, The first 48 is, I believe it's an A&E program, and it takes viewers behind the scenes of real life investigations as it follows homicide detectives in that critical time frame of the first 48 hours of the murder investigation. And the television program gives viewers almost like an unprecedented access to crime scenes, interviews, interrogations, and processing of the scenes. So it's a very interesting program. I've seen many episodes, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I'm curious if you know, how did it come about that Tucson Police Department and the first 48 came together? Like, why did they come to your police department? Is it because it's a larger police department? There's many homicides in that area. What brought that to happening?
Well, the first 48, this is back, they were here 2008 through 2009, a little while after that. So we had them here about a year and a half. Um, but they were in Phoenix prior to coming down here. And I know they reached out to our department and talked to the powers that be about being down here and being able to do, the ride-alongs with the homicide unit. And it was discussed. I know that, gosh, it went through mayor and council. It went through our department as far as having them here. When you have something like that, a lot of times they're like, well, is that going to be a positive thing for us? Is it going to be a negative thing?
Right,
They didn't want to show all the murders and homicides in
right,
Tucson. They didn't want to show the problems with the border necessarily, but when they reached out to us, it was discussed. We're going to do this professionally. We're going to make sure we do it right. Uh, I don't know how many episodes you've seen of the shows. We had, I think I was on 8, where they weren't all my cases. They were different cases that we had along with after the first 48. So we had them here, like I said, about a year and a half. And myself and different folks from our department were on that. But we always wanted to portray our department as a professional department, uh, where we did proper investigations and, we're able to come out and get a conviction, and that held up. Some of these other first 48 shows that you watch, they arrest somebody, and then at the end of the thing, it says, well, so and so was released, and it's an unsolved case. That's like, okay, we didn't have anything like that where we arrested somebody and all of a sudden they were released for something. That didn't happen.
right.
Um,
Good.
I mean, everybody we put in there, it was a conviction down the road. So we were proud of that fact. We wanted to make sure we had solid cases for the first 48 to be able to do. They wanted to stay here for a lot longer. I know in
Hmm.
Tulsa, I just did a podcast with Jason, and with Tulsa, they've been there for a lot of years, and they wanted to do the same thing with Tucson. But after a while, I know that they had a bunch of different places they wanted to try to work with, like Birmingham and I think it was Louisville and Dallas and places like that. So the field producers that we had for this, they were spread pretty thin, and we get new ones coming in, going out, going in, going out. And I know that they wanted to work different areas, not like where it's Tulsa and they're there for 15 years or whatever it's been.
Hmm.
Um, they were going to be here for a few years and then possibly come back. Why they didn't come back, I don't know. I wasn't any part of that. That's somebody with a lot higher
Yeah.
credentials than what I have.
Right.
But
Right.
the fact that they were here, um, Ryan Robbins and Jeff and some of the folks we had down here, great field producers. They did a great job. And they came out of Phoenix and then came down here and we hit it right off. Uh, really good people. The only thing that kind of got to be a problem with me was I was called Captain Obvious because, they'd say, what is that? And it's a Nokia cell phone. And I'd say it's a Nokia cell phone. And it's like, well, yeah, idiot, I can read that on there. It says Nokia. It's a cell phone. Um, the fact that it's a 9 millimeter cartridge casing, and they'd say, "What is that?" And I'd say it's a 9 millimeter cartridge casing, and you got a 9 millimeter head stamp, It's
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, I could see that. Why is he referring to this? But they'd ask you a question about what you're looking at, and you say that, and they're filming it at the same time.
Yeah,
But
yeah. What I was
that's one of the
that
issues we had.
yeah, I was and one of the questions I wanted to ask you was what were your initial thoughts when you guys found out, hey, this is going to happen? They're gonna have a crew and they're gonna film you as you work your cases. Were you hesitant initially? Were you reluctant, or did you dive right in and what was your thought?
No, I mean, we were told they're going to be here, so we didn't have a whole lot of time to sit there and worry about when they were going to get here.
Yeah.
And that was 2008 when they first started, like I said.
Okay.
Um, and my first case was the first episode that they filmed for Tucson, and that was Drop Call, episode 101. Um, and when they came in here, we went ahead and did that. But the only thing was, it didn't come out in the show until they were in sweeps weeks.
Hmm.
So I think we filmed it in, oh gosh, maybe February, and it didn't come out until May because they were waiting for the new season to start.
Sure.
So, or maybe it was even later than May. But anyway,
Yeah.
regardless, we went
All
ahead
right.
and worked that. One of the different things about First 48, if we solved it too quick, the old smoking gun with the guy standing there going, "Yeah, I did it."
Right.
They'd wrap up and go, "Yeah, that's done too quick." My partner Kathy Kelly had a case where we had a couple of guys out of Fort Huachuca. They were U.S. Army that got shot after leaving uh, a club downtown, and we're able to put two and two together with who that was that did that. They went, "Yeah, that's been solved too quick." So I mean, we had several where it was solved too quick, and they wouldn't film it. And it was like,
Huh.
doggone it, that would have been an easy one for us, but they didn't
Yeah.
want the easy ones. They wanted a little bit more of a case behind it, kind of like 2020 Dateline, things like that, where
Sure.
it's got twists and turns and plot twists. Um, so that's what we were dealt with. One of my cases that was not a first 48 case, but it was supposed to be. They came out to film with us. The parents went, "We're not going to sign this release. We don't want to be on camera. We don't want our kids' case shown." And they weren't able to do it. But later on,
Hmm.
that case was tied in with uh, one of our other cases, Devil Inside, where we had the girl Margie that was murdered underneath the bridge. 666 was written above her head, and it turned out that Apollo Ortega did that murder. We were able to tie him in with a murder that I had, where the parents said we don't want to sign. And
Hmm.
that was going toward a drug OD case, cocaine OD. And the medical examiner is like, "I think it's going to be an OD case. The person's got diabetes, heart problems. That's probably not going to be a murder." And lo and behold, Apollo Ortega, when they did the interview with him, said, "Yeah, there was another murder I did, and it was with this girl." And
Oh,
it's like,
wow.
oh, that's my case.
Wow.
So we're able to get him convicted on that case also, along with the case from Devil
Uh,
Inside.
So is the crew filming this guy confessing to that? And you, at that point, do you realize, oh man, that's mine case? Is that
Yeah,
how it unfolded?
yeah. Actually, First 48 was filming that, and Mike Carroll, one of my partners on a couple of my cases, on drop calls, matter of fact, came running in and he goes, "Hey, Bill, they're talking. He's talking about your case." And I said, "What case? I mean, you've got thousands of
Right.
cases. It's like,
Right.
what case are you talking about, Mike?
Yeah,
Is
narrow
it
it
the
down.
suicide? Is it the one that died from the heart attack? Is it the one, So I mean, I'm running back there. He's playing the tape back for me on the first 48 video. He's like, "Hey, he's talking about the girl that got murdered." And he played it for me, and it's like, that is my case. So after they got done with John Doerr and one of our other investigators got done talking with Apollo, I went in there and I talked to him about my case, had the picture of our victim, and he's like, "Yeah, that's the one that I smothered." And it was a soft smother. For anybody that's ever worked homicides, those normally don't get solved unless there's something down the trach or in the esophagus or something like that, where they're able to see,
Hmm.
where they got strangled. you've got a broken hyoid bone, the thyroid cartilage is busted, something like that. You see that type of trauma. We didn't have anything like that on this person, or you see some type of material where they stuffed it down their throat, or um, just did something else to smother them. But in my case, I didn't have anything like that. We
Hmm.
went ahead and dissected the throat section, found nothing. That's why the medical examiner was like, I think it's going to be a drug OD. And I'm like, I don't think so. I think there's something else involved in this. And sure
Wow.
enough, he admitted to it. We convicted him. He took a plea to double murder, first degree murder times two, and got murdered in prison a few months later. So
Oh, wow. All right. That's an incredible. That's incredible. That how that unfolded.
yeah, that was a
Huh.
good end result for the family. I won't say
Yeah.
closure, good end result.
That's a great way to put it. Yep. Um, when you're filming, uh, and the crew's running with you, and do you build a relationship with these guys? Do you kind of have a friendship, or is it all business? Like you don't interact with them? How was that for you?
They got here and we hit it off right off the bat. Great group of folks, like I said before. Um, the the crew went out with us. They ate dinner at my house. They ate dinner at the other people's houses. We go out to dinner at different places. As a matter of fact, on my birthday, my wife got me skydiving passes for myself and two of my boys. My third son couldn't go; he was too young. But I took two of my sons with me, and Ryan Robbins, who was a field producer, went with us and actually paid for his ticket, called his fiance on the way and said, "Hey, by the way, I'm going to go skydiving today." She's like, what are you talking about? And he said, "Yeah, Bill's going to skydive. I'm going to go ahead and film it and skydive with him."
Wow.
And sure as heck, he was out there with us. He went up on the plane. He was filming us the whole time. Um, and they were going to use that in an episode of uh, First 48, What Detectives Do in Their Off-Duty Time. It was going to be one of their segments that they're going to put together where they have people, um, you know, snow skiing and
Sure, play golf or
skiing,
barbecue or
skiing or
whatever.
water, yeah, things like that. Power lifters, people who were doing different things with the police Olympics and you name it. Um, and he went ahead and did the filming, jumped out of the plane with us. And when we got done with it, he grabbed his camera, he runs over and he goes, "Hey, how was it? What do you think?" And I said, "Oh, it was great." And he says, "You know what we should do? We should do that again. Put your suit on, and I had a zip up, like a flight suit on above
Hmm.
that, what I was wearing." And he said, "Hey, put on your suit. We'll zip this up. We'll have A&E pay for all of it. And what can happen is you come down, you unzip the thing, you pull it off, and you grab your phone and say, 'Okay, what do you got?'" And it'll be Kevin Hall, my supervisor at the time. He's calling me saying, "Hey, we got a call out." So from there, you just take it off and you go to your car and you leave for the scene. It's like,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't think they're going to buy that. The
Didn't
fact
go for
the
that.
fact that yeah, the fact that I'm doing this with my boys, that was a lot of fun. I wish I could have had my third son there with me, but he was
Sure.
he was too young. But then to have Ryan there, that was fun too.
That sounds
But
like a pretty
Ryan,
neat deal.
yeah, as a matter of fact, within about 6 months, Ryan was getting married in New York. I was supposed to be in his wedding, but I had some things coming up. I had a son that was at University of Alabama at Birmingham. He was a Division I soccer player, and
Oh,
he was trying to
wow.
get an MLS. And I was trying to do things with him and see our other kids that got married. We had three married in 16 months, and it was just too much. And I said, "Ryan, I'd love to be in your wedding, buddy, but I can't do it. Just too much stuff going on." And
Yeah.
he understood, but unfortunately, I think it kind of fractured the relationship because I couldn't go out there. But
Yeah.
great person, great folks.
That sounds
And
like it. The answer to the question is it was a good relationship.
oh yeah, oh yeah,
That's awesome. That is
yeah.
awesome. Well, let me switch and ask you this question. I don't know if it's a fair question, but I'm curious to know, is it possible for you to estimate how many homicide investigations that you conducted or were a part of? Is that even possible to guesstimate, or is that just
Hundreds,
okay?
hundreds. I well, from 2000 until 2016 when I retired. I mean, I worked cases. Uh, my last portion of 2015 to 2016, I was actually in a different unit, and I was able to I had a great supervisor, and I was able to work my cold cases up until the time that I left,
Hmm.
along with working some other things. But I mean, I worked my cold cases until the time I left, and turned in my last cold case probably 2 weeks prior to retirement. So I mean,
Okay.
in that time
Yeah.
frame, 2000 and 2016, boy, there's a bunch.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we averaged between 50 and 75 murders a year. Um, we went in a little bit higher numbers after I retired, but I mean, those were just straight murders. That wasn't suicides. That wasn't officer involved shootings. That wasn't in custody deaths. Wasn't suspicious deaths or uh, I think I said ODs already.
Hmm.
But I mean, we had a lot of different cases we were working, and some of those unsolved, those could be murder cases where we don't have that information yet.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, there was a lot of cases that I worked and a lot of investigations that I took part in. From 2000, like I said, I worked my own murder cases too. 2000 to 2005 until I left to go to homicide full time. But I don't think I missed even a handful of murder scenes in that whole time frame. I mean, I was always available. We were
Yeah.
24/7, 365. We were out and about working these cases. So I didn't miss any of those homicides. Um,
That's incredible.
yeah, as far as the officer involved shootings or in custody deaths, those were encounters. If you got those, or if it was a murder suicide, that wasn't a counter either. That's a
Hmm.
pass. You're still in the bubble.
Oh,
You're up
man.
for the next case.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
those were few and far in between, but I mean those were still there, but we didn't count those as far as our murder numbers. You're up on rotation until the next murder pops up. Then you come off the bubble. Then you're able to work it. And unfortunately, I worked two officer murders too during that time frame. One of them being one of my cases. Um,
Hmm.
Pat Hardesty was murdered, and also Eric Height. I worked both those murders. Eric was my case, but those were tough. We talked about the kid cases too, but those were pretty
Yeah.
tough, especially when you knew the person. Eric was a first sergeant, retired out of the military. I met him early on as an officer when he was coming into homicide talking to me, and I kept telling him, Eric, you got a test for detective. You do great in here. But unfortunately, he got murdered back in 2008 during the time that First 48 was also here. They
Hmm.
didn't film any of that. They didn't do that back in the day. They said, you know what, we're going to show respect to the family and not film those. Now they do. Now you
Hmm.
watch First 48 and things, and they have some of those cases on their shows.
Hmm.
But back then they would not do it, which I understand.
Sure.
It was better for the family. The family, you've got to drag them through court hearings and everything else. And years of doing that and years of capital murder cases and doctors going in to interview these people and the family's brought back into this again. They didn't want to have it on First 48 where you're seeing reruns like you do now
Yeah.
of our cases where they're going to have to relive this again. They didn't want to do that. So
Yeah. I understand that. That makes sense. Well, at what point, when did you retire from active law enforcement?
2016, November of 2016.
Okay. Well, let's talk about maybe what you do since retirement. You're involved, I I believe, with the Arizona Homicide Investigators Association. You do instructing. Just kind of tell us a little bit about, what life is like for you now.
Yeah, the Arizona Homicide Investigators Association. I've been a member of that since '98. I was a board member, then I was secretary, then I was vice president, then I was president, and I've been past president now since, of course, I retired. Um, but I still do things with them. I'm still a member of that. I also, since 2015, have taught with National Criminal Justice Training Center, or NCJTC, with Fox Valley. I've been instructing with them for that amount of time until now. And with them, I've done crime scene classes that I still do. I've done Death Investigation Academy. I was on the ground floor with them, getting started. And I also do suspicious death, like I said, with a medical examiner from Arizona here. We've done, I don't know how many cases. The only thing that, or how many classes, I should say. The only thing that kind of threw a monkey wrench in that was COVID, of course.
Hmm.
We couldn't teach in person, and we didn't teach for a certain amount of time. I've also taught unexplained death investigations during that time frame also with Fox Valley. And when I went ahead and worked those cases again after COVID, then we're able to go ahead and start teaching uh, full time, and have done that now since well, probably 2000. We probably had a 2 year time frame, 2000, let's see, 2020 through 22, where we weren't teaching in person at all. We were doing a lot of virtual stuff.
Hmm.
Um, but since the 22 time frame until now, we've been teaching in person again, since COVID's kind of been lifted.
Sure.
Uh,
Sure.
I also teach with advanced police concepts with Mike Shentrup's group, and I teach death investigation with them. I teach a death investigation 2 day seminar with Mike and his crew, and been doing that now for the past 2 years.
Okay.
So,
If
like I said,
if
everything is case study run. Again, I don't teach any new things on. Everybody asks me, well, do you go to classes? How do you keep current on some of these other things? I don't keep current on those type of things as far as cell phones and computers and things like that. I
right.
let the other experts do that. For subject matter experts, for us, I get a lot out of teaching these type of things because that's what I look at in the evals. And a lot of people tell me, man, I love hearing about these case studies. I love hearing about the different things that you dealt with. And again, it's problems we have with the cases and how we're able to get through that, or they ended up in the cold case room. And a lot of people want to hear that case study information. And I think that's, again, one of the best ways to learn is by the mistakes that are made. And, unfortunately, these folks are going to have their own mistakes they're going to make in their investigations, but that's how you learn. That's how you sharpen that sword. And
Right.
that's what I do when I go in there and teach these classes where people are going, huh, okay, so yeah, he's actually talking about the fact that somebody screwed up this case, whether it be from the crime scene initiation, from a first responder doing it, from him doing it himself, from an investigator screwing this up, from a county attorney or a prosecutor that let this thing slip through the cracks and problems with them. Maybe the judge decided, uh, they wanted to have a mistrial because of something that was discussed that kind of put a dent in the case. We talk about all those type of things. The medical examiner will talk about some of the cases they had, and again, we bring it up where it's kind of the Sean process: suicide, homicide, accidental, undetermined, or natural. How do you look at this? How are you looking at this case? How are you leaning? And then when they say, well, yeah, it's going to be a homicide. Okay, well, we're going to introduce you to this part of it now, where they go, oh, wait a minute. Okay, that threw a whole monkey wrench in the whole case.
Hmm.
Or it's a suicide, and then we bring something around, and they're like, oh wow, okay, that's going to be a homicide based on this. So we try to do that, and again, it's a teaching process where they look at, I understand a mistake was made, and I'm not going to make that same mistake, or I'm at least going to try not to make that same mistake. And I need to have my first responders trained. I need to make sure my detectives are trained. With Tucson Police Department, I started a program with, uh, instructing detectives because, you go through a 40-hour detective program, but then that's all you have. You've got AOT, ADT, whatever you want to call it. where you go through your yearly thing. But I
Right.
wanted to bring in the crime scene people where we talked about, all right, well, you've got swabs. How many swabs are you collecting of this blood? You've got a trail where this person ran out after being stabbed and they're bleeding out. And the person that's chasing them got stabbed also because they went down the hilt of the knife and they're also bleeding. How many swabs you taking? Probably 10. 10. Okay. Well, if you've got a suspect and a victim in this, you need to do a lot more than that. And maybe they ran
Yeah.
for 2 blocks, things like that to get them working where they go, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, that's not cut and dry. We talk about, the swabs, the buccal swabs, things like that, where you're doing DNA processing. How often are you going to do that? We bring that out in these classes where the detectives were able to go in there and hopefully learn a little bit more than what they learned in that 40-hour class several years ago, where they were able to work with this and work with the crime scene people and the crime lab and able to, get a nice solid case.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the best way to learn is from folks that have been there, experienced it, had success, have made mistakes, and that is a fantastic learning environment. If somebody were interested in hearing you or having you speak to their agency or department, what would the best way to be for them to get a hold of you?
They can reach me through my regular email. It's homicide, HOMICIDE, the number 34268 at yahoo.com. Homicide 34268 at yahoo.com. That's my personal email. They could give me a William Hanson Consulting, www.williamhansonconsulting, all one word.com, and reach me that way. If you want to contact NCJTC through Fox Valley, you could do that through www.ncjtc.org, or you could contact Advanced Police Concepts at that email, or I'm sorry, at that website. And
Okay.
uh, and you don't have to just contact me if you want to. We've got NCJTC probably has over 300 subject matter experts through different fields: SWAT, fire, police work, uh, investigations, forensic work, things like that, where you could reach out and get them in there to teach classes. The Amber Alert program, I've taught with them before for years. They'll come out and teach it for free. As long as you
Mm,
find a location, have people's rear ends in the seats, they'll come out and teach a class. They do a great car class. They do a great um, class where it's all talking about abducted child, and they'll do the tabletop exercises where you're able to go through and see what you need to have in the chance that you have an abducted child, which is a big problem because a lot of departments go, oh, we don't need that until it
right.
happens. Then they go, oh my God, who do we call? What do we need to do? We need a jillion people out here. We had a 1,200 person department that we were stretching ourselves thin with the FBI and with Marshall's office and people like that trying to uh, work an abducted child, and with the sheriff's office helping us out, and some of the state agencies, things like that, where we were just running out of people. Um,
Mm.
so these type of things where it's a tabletop exercise through NCJTC, Fox Valley, great folks to have in there. They'll set you down. They'll bring you through that. They'll get you certified in the cart. Uh, where you have a child response team that gets certified from them. And again, it's a free class.
Mm.
The suspicious death class that I teach with the medical examiner, that's a pay class, but it's not that expensive to come and attend a 2-day class. With the APC, with Advanced Police Concepts, I teach a 2-day homicide seminar where I go out and teach that. It's a pay class again, but it's not that expensive. My next class is coming up in Sandy, Utah in August. That you want to sign up for, by all means, go in there and look it up.
And that was my
And
question is people don't have to come to you to Arizona. You do travel outside of the state
yeah,
to
we've
provide your
since
training.
20 yeah, since 2015, I've traveled around the country. There aren't a whole lot of states I haven't been in there in that time
Yeah.
frame.
Yeah.
Again,
Okay.
except for COVID.
Right. Right. Well, that's outstanding. I think that would be a great opportunity for folks that want to keep sharpen their skills on homicide investigations. So I encourage people to take advantage of that. I think, well, first, I really appreciate you joining me today. I found our conversation, or your conversation, incredibly interesting. And, I'll conclude with I want to, again, thank you for your military service, but also thank you for your law enforcement service and everything you did to keep society safe out there.
Well, thank you for your service too, Jim, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on here. And I just want to say in closing, everybody stay safe out there. God bless you if you're in this career field because it's not an easy one to be in, as Jim and I both know. It's not getting any easier. But
Right.
be safe out there, and please watch your six.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. So thank you, Bill. And I want to also thank my listeners. I appreciate everyone tuning in. And I just want to, exactly, I want to encourage you to follow, like, share, and subscribe my social media so I can keep bringing you top quality guests to share their stories like Bill Hanson today. So thank you to my listeners. And I'll echo what he concluded with. Everybody stay safe out there. The Right to Remain Silent podcast is brought to you by Streetwise 360 Studios. I would like to again thank today's guest for sharing the story right here on the podcast. Please remember to like, follow, share, and recommend us so that I can continue to bring you high caliber guests sharing their experiences, just like we heard today. If your law enforcement agency is interested in training provided by Streetwise 360, or if you know someone that has an interesting law enforcement story to share, please contact me via the website www.streetwise-360.com. www.streetwise-360.com.